the Q&A. So as long as we can do that, we'll just feed questions to ourselves as it goes. I think should work. But so anyway, we'll get started. So hi, everyone. Thank you for being here today. Our team is Team 7373 Carbon Fiber Eagle Robotics from Mount Perrin Christian School. So what we'd like to do today is offer an open question and answer session to talk about some of what's worked for us over the past season and hopefully help teams be able to make a competitive portfolio for their league tournament, state championship, and even what's beyond that. So I think what we're going to do is hopefully not too much dead air at the front, but we are going to go ahead and open up immediately for question and answer. So any question you can think of about FTC judging process, what's worked for us, etc., I think should be fine. And temporarily, I'll pass it over to anyone else on our team if they want to add anything. Looks like that is not the case. So, I mean, we'll give it a second to see if anyone has a question.
All right, since we don't have questions yet, I'll go ahead and jump in while we're kind of brainstorming and thinking of some things. And
oh, we do have one.
Oh, okay, we do have one. So let's go ahead and start with this. Worst mistake you have ever made. So let's see. Would one of y'all like to take that for robot game?
We probably do have some good ones for that.
For robot game, I think the main thing for robot game is not tightening the bolts before each match. So we've had whole parts come off during a match, and then it just doesn't work for them the rest of the game.
Yeah.
Because we don't tighten stuff.
And then I would tie that back into for the team as a whole. We realize that we make bigger mistakes or our worst mistakes when we don't pay attention to those small details, whether it's in the robot game or in our portfolio, not paying attention to award criteria or the requirements for each thing that we need to do in competition. Some of those small things that we've overlooked in the past have actually led to some of our worst mistakes. So I would just say from that, we learn to pay attention to the small details, sometimes bigger than the bigger picture for each competition.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we'll wait a little bit of time for the next question, but we can go ahead and start talking a little bit about awards and what teams need to think of through the season. So, of course, there's a variety of awards you can earn at the First Tech Challenge competitions, and sort of the pinnacle being the Inspire Award that you want to strive for. But really, the Inspire Award is purely just a combination of all these other awards together and making sure that you have a comprehensive portfolio as a team of what you're coming into competition with. So from Robot Game to Engineering Portfolio under Think Award, which is huge criteria for the Inspire Award, and I'll jump back to that in a moment. Innovate Award, Design Award, and then the couple others I'm forgetting, Control Award by ARM. I think I said Motivate and Connect as well. So all these come together as pieces into the Inspire Award. Without one of them, you don't have that comprehensive portfolio that you need. So for instance, the engineering portfolio is really what you're trying to use as overall summing up everything you've done. And that's your primary vehicle of communicating everything to the judge that you've done. You, of course, have the 5 to 10, 15-minute presentation if you count questions, and then paid interviews. But the engineering portfolio serves as an invaluable resource for judges to go back and look at the content that's in it anytime they want, at specific content that they want to, and then hopefully your engineering portfolio is following those different award criteria so that they can go through and see in order of what they're looking for. So one thing also that's come up is in the past season, we switched from just the engineering notebook to having the engineering notebook and engineering portfolio. And I think teams might be wondering where sort of the notebook comes into play when you also have the portfolio at this point. So the game manual part 1 states that the portfolio is now the main document that you're submitting. Yet it's limited to 15 pages. So you're trying to make it as concise as possible hopefully targeting every single thing in those awards, but not having extra superfluous content that you don't need. The notebook, on the other hand, transforms it into still this great document that you can use as a team to document everything throughout the season that doesn't fit in the shortened 15-page engineering portfolio. So hopefully with that, you can still have a notebook. Oh, looks like we do have another question that came in the chat, so I'll answer that in a moment. But hopefully when you do come to competition, and not hopefully, you should still have an engineering notebook that you bring and present with, not present in your kit with. I'm sorry, clarification on that. So that judges can ask to see maybe a specific page, specific decision process, and you have that ready. And that also helps with supporting your Innovate Design Awards, as well as talking a little bit more about your outreach. So we do have a question in the chat. It says, how did your team handle sustainability? So pass that on to someone else. You want to take that?
So a big part of our sustainability program is we actually have a couple FLL teams that we mentor throughout the season. So we go over there and we help them out with their like robot and their project. And since like a couple of us have been through the FLL program, we know sort of what they have to do and how they have to do it. And so we work with them on their FLL program. And then also we host a FLL tournament at our school, and we actually host a bunch of teams there. And actually host the tournament. And so a big part of our sustainability is having the FLL kids see us and see our robot as well, and like want to come up through the FLL program up into our FTC program. So like most of our kids that are in the FTC program now have come up through our FLL program that we mentor.
But even if you don't have an FLL program attached to your school or attached to your FTC teams, it's important to look into the new members that are coming on your team. Make sure you're recreating yourself and the skills that you've learned and grown to possess in your time on robotics. Make sure you're recreating that in the new students. And that's going to help keep the program alive. Make sure you're not the only one with your skill set on the team.
Great on that. So it looks like we do have another question. What importance does your team put on the pit? Besides just a place to work on the robot, what does it really need to show? So maybe Aiden or Tade, one of you want to target that one?
Yeah, sure, I can say it. All right, so we'd like to show the pit to show many different things just besides our robot. We want to show our outreach, sustainability, maybe even our future goals if we're talking to them. Kind of show our professionalism as well, to show that we take this seriously and we really do enjoy robotics.
I think that it's also a place where we can just give people an overview of how our season has gone, how we've been working, and how we can be professional and efficient as well as organized at the same time.
Okay, so it looks like we have a new question as well. How does your team train your rookies? So, I mean, I can answer that unless one of y'all want to do it. Okay. So one thing that's really neat about our program is Grant mentioned the FLL teams that we're able to consistently mentor. So that's one thing powerful that I think would be valuable for other teams, is making sure that there's people that you're continually pouring into. Outreach shouldn't be just a single time thing. It should be something recurring where you can continually make a difference with of course, you want a wide variety of people that you're reaching out to, but consistent difference is better than jumping to a variety of different things and not doing too much in it. So with us, we do the mentoring FLL teams, but we do have, when they eventually move into our program, we already have that relationship established, and that's something really important, I think, for other teams too, when they're looking at sustainability, is already having that in place and knowing the people who are coming into your team as well as possible. So then at that point, we can work together with these members to train them as much as possible. Sort of, in First Tech Challenge, you have this really great thing if team members can do so many different things. And I think that's the case on our team as well. So you could have team members programming, or maybe jumping over to robot or doing outreach. And I think that's also something that judges are probably looking for, is a diversity of experience across the team. So as far as rookie training, we have team members who then can come on and work with us directly on projects. And I think that's the biggest thing, is just involving your rookie members as soon as possible, making sure they're part of everything you're doing as well. And I mean, if one of you, Sarah, would want to add on to something, I don't know if there's anything to add on to that one. However, we do have more questions.
Well, just as a final note for that one, when you do have rookies coming onto the team, whether or not they have an interest when they join the team, make sure that they get the opportunity to explore every single aspect of your team, that they all get the equal chance to participate. That'll help you have members that are interested and involved and really enjoy what they're doing. It'll help them be more invested in the team. So that's a big part of training our rookies.
So next question is, what is the difference between a good portfolio from a great one?
So
Question. You got that?
I would say what sets a great portfolio apart is consistent documentation from the beginning of the season, and also making sure that's a collaborative effort. So making sure every single member on your team is participating and contributing in some way to your final product. Also keeping meeting notes and consistent documentation of every single part of your team, not just what's being done on the robot, but your outreach, your team plan, and then also setting goals at the beginning of the season and being honest and consistent and keeping up with them. But also, it's not about telling judges that you were perfect all the time. It's about telling them that you messed up or you failed at something, but here's how we overcame it. And that's what's going to set a team apart, especially in their documentation. But someone else can add on to that.
I think that was definitely a good answer, talking about making sure you're consistently documenting throughout the season and making sure that team members are all a part of the portfolio. It shouldn't be just something that one member is contributing to, because there's different experiences and value that every team member brings to the table. So I think, as Sarah said, that's one of the biggest things you can do within it. And then, of course, definitely look at the engineering portfolio guidelines on Game Manual Part 1, because it is pretty specific on things. You definitely don't want to go to competition, maybe not have your team number in a certain spot of the portfolio, that something as simple as that, even if your portfolio had everything, if you don't meet one of those requirements, your portfolio is out. So I think that's something really important. I know we talked about, I think it was Grant and Sarah, I could be wrong, and that talked about sort of making sure you pay attention to the small details. That would be something I would heavily emphasize to make sure before competition. So it looks like, scrolling down, we have another question. What kinds of things do you think need to be in the engineering portfolio or the notebook? So
That question
you got that one?
So I think sometimes it's helpful to start with a plan at the beginning of the season, whether that's a business plan or just goals that you as individuals set for the team. Make sure that that's documented, and also if they change throughout the season, you need to be showing judges your journey throughout the season, whether it's your goals and your robot. We also like to include our robot progression from meet one all the way up to league tournament or state, however far we make it in competition. It helps judges to know why we changed the robot and how we changed it. But then we also make sure to emphasize the team structure and the way our team functions in the engineering portfolio. So whether that's outreach, core values, or just goals we've set for the season, we like to have a balance between both the engineering and the team sections of the notebook.
Yeah, definitely good answer. One thing I do want to add as well is making sure, like with all the points that Sarah mentioned, which are hugely important for the portfolio and sort of building out that overall portfolio you're submitting to judges. One thing you can also do is just look at Game Manual Part 1 at the different award criteria. Like the Inspire Award, especially, is a culmination of all the different awards, but even if you're targeting a specific award, maybe you're not going for Inspire, but you have a really competitive Innovate portfolio, you want to make sure you show that. So look at Game Manual Part 1, look at the various questions, criteria that the Innovate Award is asking for, and try and answer some of those as best as possible. So it looks like, next question, does your team do anything in the off season? So who wants to take that one? I kind of needed. Okay, sounds good. So the off season is definitely an important time, and teams do various different things in the off season. So I think I'd say trying to word this as more recommendations than what specifically we do. But one thing that's important in the off season is definitely taking that time to do as much preparation as you can for the next season, or even doing things that you might not have enough time to do during the regular season. Like, for instance, one thing I can think of immediately is during the regular season, of course, you're working on your robot for competition. You've got league meets, league tournament, and state championship coming up. And it's pretty fast-paced once you get in the season. But in the off season, a really valuable time for working on outreach, maybe even if you wanted to do things like outreach robots, you could do something like that, and that's something we've explored in the off season before. Rookie training as well is something hugely important you can do in the off season, because you've got that extra time that you can spend with people that sometimes, of course, you should spend during the main season, but it definitely feels a little bit harder to do when you do have the fast pace of competitions. Let's see, other things in the off season. Some teams do basic robot design during the off season, looking at maybe making a new chassis that once you do get in the season, you don't have so much time. And so I think hopefully that answers that. If any of y'all want to add on. covered it. Sarah?
Let me jump in with one thing. On the team side, it's really important in the off season because the regular season does get so busy. Make sure that you're hanging out together and becoming friends and kind of forming that bond. It'll show in judging if y'all are friends, y'all are close, and you kind of get along outside of robotics too. That's something that kind of gets lost in the season sometimes. And if you have a friendship formed in the off season with a lot of your teammates, it'll definitely show in the stress of judging, and it'll make your team present better because they'll know that you're more than just a team during the season, you're friends during the off season. So that's just something fun to add on, but that's something we've always enjoyed doing too.
Okay. Yeah, we do. So it looks like our next question is, we just lost a main mentor. How can we still win different awards? So that's probably a tougher one to answer because, I mean, there's a lot in the award criteria of different things you can target. I mean, the very first thing I'd say is just making sure your team's working as hard as possible to stay in line with the different award criteria, and documentation is such an important part. Your team, even if you did lose a mentor, you still have a journey that you're going through, and you can still document that and share that with the judges. So that would be something that I would say immediately as the largest thing, of just make sure you're still documenting everything you do as best as possible in that portfolio. Sure, sir, would you have anything to add overall to that?
So I think now this is going to depend partly on that main mentor's role on your team, but one thing that you can really focus on this season is the more team aspects, whether it's connect and motivate, and you might be a little bit more lost on the robot side if that's where your mentor was emphasized and that's where he was focused. But you can focus on that team side and you can create a stronger bond within your team because of the experience you went through. And then like Steven said, just making sure you're staying in the award criteria. But the bottom line is, if you can show a way that it made y'all stronger as a team or that you were still able to overcome this challenge, that's something that you can really emphasize, and it will make you a competitive team, even without the mentor.
Completely agreed. So it looks like we have, let me see, got a couple more in here. So what was the hardest thing to accomplish last year? So one of y'all want to take that, Tade? Probably a difficult one too. I mean, y'all, I can jump in for now.
Yeah, just a little bit.
So, I mean, last year, I can say broadly, was definitely an interesting season, difficult in many ways for us and for many teams, for some harder than others, due to the pandemic and all the changes that brought, virtual competitions, in-person competitions. Now, as I say that, I just thought of one thing. So our league, so this would be something very specific for us, and I don't know if this is the hardest thing, yet one difficulty we specifically experienced, and I think that other teams might actually experience this season, as we're all going back into in-person competition, is that last season our team competed in the Etowah League, and the Etowah League, I believe, was the only league in the state of Georgia that was competing in person up to league tournament, and then we had the virtual state championship. So many teams were already used to the virtual competition format at that point and designed the robots for that aspect of competition, knowing you've always got rings that are coming to you from the return rack. For us, we came from an in-person competition, and our game strategy for that was a little bit different, knowing that probably we wouldn't have constant access to the return rack. Our scoring goals wouldn't always be available to us. So it kind of changed how we do things going into the virtual competition. And I think that was a struggle initially for us, is just adapting to that, knowing we're the only robot on the field. And I think this season, it might sort of be the inverse for many teams. You're used to competing by yourself on a field, and now you're competing with 4 other teams. So it goes into, how can you make a successful autonomous that doesn't interfere with other teams? Working on game strategy with other teams, maybe even for tally-off before a match starts. Because if you get to a match, you really don't want to be trying to do the same thing as another team. You want to prioritize your strengths and weaknesses with that of your alliance partner to get a successful match and high score overall. So I think that's one thing that for us, of course, the inverse of that, for other teams, the inverse of that is just that change in in-person virtual competitions. So, and I don't know if there's something else that maybe one of you guys want to add, or Sarah.
I think outreach became difficult last season for sure, based on the traditional outreach that we had always done, in-person events with lots of people around, but it gave us the unique opportunity to restructure and to kind of branch out into some new opportunities. And we were still able to complete our outreach and to reach out to community and form new relationships. So I think in any difficulty that you face or in any hardship that you face, if you can spin it around into a new opportunity, build new relationships, go out into the community and help in whatever way you can, that's definitely going to show in judging and show in the way that you present yourselves. And it also is just a good experience for your team because we're completing outreach and doing these things not for the awards, but because it's the right thing to do and we feel led to do it. So just make sure that any hardship that comes upon your team or comes into the season, that you're taking it as an opportunity and not an obstacle.
Agreed on that. So our next question we have is, what tips would you give for the judging presentation?
I can take this one.
Okay, you got that, Grant?
Yeah, so one major tip I would give for the judging presentation is to make sure every team member is informed on like all the different aspects of the team. So like people working on robot know exactly what's in the notebook and know exactly about your business plan, and then vice versa. So and like everyone knows about everything, so they can answer questions or they can be informed on on every part of the team, rather than just knowing their one single section of what you do in the team. It's best to know everything so that you can have a more successful judging presentation.
One tip I'd give is sometimes people are uncomfortable with judging or they get really, really nervous. But one thing that helps me is thinking that the judges are super nice. They're just like us. They love robots. They love this robotics program. So just try and be comfortable with them. Treat them like friends. They're nice people and they want to be friends with you.
Completely agreed with what Grant and Aiden said. One thing I want to add as well, and I think linking to Aiden sort of saying how the judges are also just equally passionate as you are for robotics and what you're doing in the competition, I think it's just making sure you show that passion that your team has for what you do. You spent, by the time you reach league tournament, I mean, I can't count the number of months, but a lot of months in between the season start and league tournament. And so I think you really want to show to judges sort of that passion that your team's had throughout the entire season, how much time you've worked, how much time you spent, and how much you love what you're doing. And I think that they'll pick up on that in addition to all the preparation that you've done and that you've shown through your robot itself, the engineering portfolio, the overall package you're bringing.
Yeah, to add on to that, it's like a lot of those judges have been here for a little while. Some of them have connections to other teams, or they've just been judging for a while. So they built this passion or this enjoyment from doing what they're doing, and just connecting with them on that, and like showing them that you have that passion too can't hurt. It's always helpful to connect with them on that level. Possible.
So it looks like our next question, make sure I don't skip, so we did that one, is how do you prepare for the judges to come to the pit? It's probably a more complicated one as well. There, you got it?
So I think you're going to recognize that as the season starts, you're always going to have team members that have a certain affinity for a certain aspect of the team. So one thing you can do is know that you are going to have certain team members that are going to want to talk to certain sets of judges. And that also goes along with knowing the awards criteria. And when judges start asking you questions, make sure that you have an idea of what they want to hear about, what aspect of the team they want to know about. And bring your team in. Make sure that everyone is answering those questions. You're going to have certain people that are going to be better at answering those questions. Make sure everyone gets a word in. And also just remaining professional, remaining friendly and polite. And if you want to add on to that more specific details.
No, I mean, that's definitely good. One thing I do want to mention is, as mentioned earlier, just recapping that the engineering portfolio and engineering notebook, is make sure you have those ready for the judges, especially since you're not turning in your notebook this season. That's still a really powerful way for you to show that decision process, documentation, and show that you've gone the extra mile to not just remember what you've done, but also have it in a format that can be easily demonstrated to others. And I think that's also something, if you're looking in the overall engineering industry, that people do. So, I mean, I was going to add something else to that, I thought, but I think that overall covers it, just making sure you have that available. I know one thing we've done as well, and this was before the engineering portfolio was a thing, but now that the engineering portfolio is a thing, and it's also a very short document, which gives you the advantage of you could probably, and now this is if you're making it digitally, but you could photocopy as well, is have an extra copy of it in your kits that you can show to judges. Maybe there's a specific page you want to make sure they see, or specific content you think is really powerful. So if you have that in your pit, in addition to judging, I think that'll boost overall success when judges come to the pit.
And like Sarah was saying about how some certain people want to talk to certain judges, I guess it's always helpful to know who the judges are when they're coming to your pit, like they always want to hear about what you're doing with your team, but they're also there for a certain part, at least most of them. Either we're like judges for certain awards is what I'm getting at. And so it always helps to know what they want to hear and use that to form and build a good response to their questions.
Looks like. Yeah, our next question is, how do you consistently stay mentally focused on your goal during your meetings? Do you have any tips? So one of y'all want to take that? Sarah, Ken, if needed?
I feel like the best way to set up our meetings and to stay focused is to set up a structure for the meeting. What are the goals for every team member? Try and group up, figure out what you want to do, how are you going to do it, how long is it going to take, and if it's going to take multiple meetings or not. That's the main thing.
Yeah, agreed on that. I think two things also is, I'm forgetting the two things as I start to say it, is first off, collaboration, as Aiden said, working with other teammates. There's a lot of value in different perspectives as well, especially during the design part of the season. And then also planning ahead of time, instead looking at things that are maybe not just at this meeting, but in the future as well, and planning out your season so you don't get to a meeting trying to figure out what you need to do next, because you know what you need to do next. Sort of, and I think hopefully that answers that with both of us. So in that case, we can jump to the next question. And also, looks like it's 9:30. I think we're going to wrap this up probably 9:35, 40-ish. Probably not that many questions left. So our next question is, sponsorships can be really tough. How does your team get funding and get grants? So Sarah, would you want to take this?
Yeah, so to start, that's definitely valid, and they are difficult to get sponsorships and grants. The first thing we do, this is one of the things we actually do in the off season, is create a business plan. So this includes core values, goals for the season, and then just also an overview of the FIRST program and our program. So that can kind of set the tone for sponsors. You want it to be a professional document that you can take out to the community to present. Utilize sponsors that your school has or that local organizations have, but also don't be afraid to reach out to people in the community, sending out your business document. Make sure you're personable and friendly, but that you're also professional. And don't be afraid to talk about your competitive success and where you've gone as a team. Or if you're a new team, don't be afraid to say that too, and show what your goals are and where you want to go. But then also make sure, if you are reaching out to people, that you're showing exactly where their money is going to go, exactly what you want to do, and that you're being very responsible for it. So I would say one of the things that we have to make sure we do every time we're creating or presenting a budget is making sure we have multiple people look over it, check the numbers, and make sure we're being responsible and not having any oversight in that. If y'all want to add on.
I think you answered it pretty well, bro. I don't think there's anything to you to add on. So it looks like our next question is, does your team have an example business plan or know where a good one is?
Our business plan is always linked on our website, and then also on our website, and we can post some of these links in an easy to find place or a QR code or something. We did a business plan and budgeting presentation in last year's kickoff. That's always a great plan to utilize, a great resource to utilize. If you don't have a business plan, or if you have one that you think needs improvement, that presentation can be a great launching point. So yes, we do have some example business plans, and then also a presentation to help you get started with yours.
And then one thing I also want to add is on the business plan and specifically looking at judging and awards, that definitely is an important component of, I believe it's the Think Award. It might also link into Motivate or Connect, but don't quote me on that part. But for the Think Award, at least, it definitely is a huge portion to have a team plan that your team's defined, summarizing that in the engineering portfolio, but hopefully having that as another resource. And we do call ours a business plan specifically, with definitely elements of a team plan. It talks about our sustainability and then of course finances, and that's things we want to emphasize to our sponsors as well. But many of these things like sustainability and outreach are what we're trying to define as a team for our own goals. And so that being said, teams don't necessarily have to take a business plan route specifically in the engineering portfolio. They can look at things that they're specifically passionate about, showing the judges that they planned out for themselves for the season, their own goals. The gaming all part one says it could even be something like documenting team goals for what they want to learn throughout the season. So there's many different ways you can take it with specifically looking at the engineering portfolio. And there definitely is not a one approach is correct for this. So let's see, looks like at the moment we don't have any more questions. So we're at 9:33. So I think if we get another question in the next couple minutes, we'll answer it. Otherwise, we'll try and wrap this up. So give it about one more minute.
So y'all feel free to add any more questions to the chat, but just to kind of wrap up, we want to say thank y'all for coming. And then also just keep in mind that each team is unique. These are just recommendations and things that have worked for us. Go in line with the awards criteria, and also, be proud of your team. Enjoy what y'all are doing, have fun, make it a fun experience, and just keep in mind that these are recommendations. Y'all are all unique, so just be proud of what you do as well.
Agreed. So I think it looks like there still are no more questions. So I think we'll go and fully wrap it up at this point. So thank you everyone for coming.